Mini episode 520 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
30 seconds.
In front of all these people, you're going to pull out a gun and you're going to shoot an unarmed man.
20 seconds.
So what are you going to do?
10.
Welcome to the FDH Lounge and the Justified episode recap.
It was justified.
With your original dignitaries.
Fire in the hole!
Rick Morris and Jason Jones.
You got ice cold water running through your veins.
Breaking down each Justified episode the moment they've concluded.
Did you take a peek inside the soul of Raymond and you?
I'm just going to let that old dog lie.
Real-time reactions. Next level analysis.
You seem to be harboring a bit of hostility there, brother.
So I've been told.
And now, your dignitaries.
Well, I believe we can take her from here.
Welcome, everyone, to FDH Lounge, mini episode number 520. This is FDH Lounge dignitaries Rick Morris and Jason Jones breaking it down for you. And, of course, we also represent not just another TVsite.com. Jason is the underboss over there of that site, and I am covering Justified in column form as well. So you can check out the written reviews, and every week we have this show paired up with the written reviews there. And I am also now covering over there, by the way, for a crossover of anyone who loves this show also or who loves Breaking Bad and was interested to check out this new show, Better Call Saul, as I was more or less put on the spot by site boss Jeff Sack. Hashtag kidding, not kidding. But regardless, I am now covering that show as well, and people can check that out and see what the coverage is. Spoiler alert, I'm liking what I see of it thus far quite a lot. Loving it, actually. So you can check that out as well as the Justified coverage there. And, of course, speaking of Justified, that is something that Jason and I have been covering here episode by episode for the FDH Lounge, going back to the beginning of Season 5. We are now 4 episodes into Season 6, which I'll speak for myself, I'm finding to be much, much better than Season 5, and we'll see what Jason Jones has to say about that. Jason, what do you think tonight, buddy? I thought another real strong episode and continuing to build on a strong season.
Yeah, absolutely. Strong is a good word, to be honest. I don't think it wasn't the same as what we saw last week, but if you may permit me to jump around, getting Dickie Bennett and Loretta in the fold, and then even an apple pie reference absolutely helps sort of move that along and keep us interested in sort of a 365-degree way. So there were moments in this episode that were really, really good, made you sort of sit forward in your seat. But as we'll get into, if this was the log ride at the amusement park, I feel like we are at that point where we're curving towards the apex. We're not ready to fall yet. We're not ready to go down, but it's starting to get that click, click, click nervousness happening. And I texted you off the air that this is starting to feel a little bit like the end of Breaking Bad. And by no means is that a criticism.
Oh, no. We're starting to get to that point, and I'll tell you what. You look at what happened tonight. I had made a reference a couple weeks ago to Danny Crow last year, that when he had his 8 Mile moment last year with Floyd, that he was more or less like a stand-in for the audience in that moment. I almost felt like tonight, with all the fan service we were getting as far as the callbacks, I almost felt like Avery Markham was a sort of a stand-in for the audience when he had Loretta do the dipping her finger in the apple pie and tasting it before he would take a drink out of it. That was one of those things, because you texted me, and I had the exact same thought. She made apple pie for this guy. Oh, no, she didn't. This could be the end of him. And clearly that's a thought Avery Markham had as well. So I wonder how many other fans out there, big-time fans of the show, are thinking the same thing. My guess is most of us.
Well, the funny thing about that is there's a part of you that just is along for the ride. But then again, there's also a part of you that being someone that does recaps like this and with the TV side, the various TV experiences that we've had, you start to do television math. And yes, for a split second each time, I really, really thought that Ty was going to die. And then I thought Avery was going to die. But each time, right as I'm getting excited, like, oh, we're going to have some carnage here, my immediate recourse after that was it's way too early for them to kill them all. And then, to be honest, when Avery Markham pulled that little dip your finger in trick, I was not surprised in the least. And that's the beauty of this character and this show, is he's been on camera for maybe 6 or 7 minutes, and I already feel like I know as much is as needed. So impressive, and I'm sure everybody that saw season 2 in any way, shape, or form, especially the end, had to have sort of sat up in their seat when Loretta said, "There's a little drink that I know."
Yeah, and that's when you think about it. Actually, when you think about all the people that died season 2 or subsequently, as in the case of Arlo, really, there's not much left but Dickie and Loretta to get to as far as the legacy of season 2, what lives on this show, primarily off screen, because they have each made a handful of appearances over the course of the last couple of seasons, and with that being the case, for as much as they've been on, this may be it for them tonight. Although it looks like Loretta is still tied into this, there should still be developments going on. And long story short, of course, in terms of what we're talking about there, and I would have a hard time believing that anybody is following this show without having watched this episode. But for the sake of anyone who's a little bit fuzzy on any of this, Dickie Bennett sold his land, part of the continuing land grab there, and apparently didn't realize he was selling it to Loretta. He was frustrated when he was told that. He got a visit in jail from Tim and Raylan. They're following this paper trail, and it turns out now, the mystery of the last couple of weeks, why Avery Markham is buying up all the land, it does tie back to the fact that, again, the guy was an illegal weed kingpin in Kentucky, legal weed kingpin in Colorado, and is now basically doing the old homesteader thing here of guessing that it's going to be legal in Kentucky, buying up the land, and you're going to have mega pot farms going all through Harlan County, this time in the open light of day, apparently. And so Loretta is now sitting on this chunk of land, gets a visit from Ty, is subsequently interrupted by Tim and Raylan when they find out about this, and then subsequently Avery joins the party later on. It was not just a matter of getting the callbacks in terms of the characters tonight, Jason, but the other things that were said. You're talking about some of the things that Avery said in the course of that conversation. That reference also, too, you're going to give me 24 hours to get out of town. A callback to the cold open of the very pilot episode here, how the show got its name. The shooting was justified. So they're doing a lot of fan service here in this episode, Jason. A chance for all of us to mark out and go, oh, yeah, another piece of the history we love.
Absolutely. And to me, it may not be a big deal. It's a stroke of genius to break that out at this point, because we are still early in the season. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that were, watched last season and maybe they gave up on it and they're coming back or whatever the deal is. But this was a tip of the cap to the fans, especially the long-term fans, and it was incredible that they pulled that out. Now, if I may, real quick, because I'm the one that's here, you just take a moment and try to give some context to why this storyline fits so perfectly. The state of Colorado voted and passed for recreational marijuana use, and it was ratified or whatever, I want to say by February of last year, and maybe 6 months ago, in the town of Aurora, which ironically is the town that I live in, a suburb of Denver, there was a huge, and I don't want to call it land grab, but there was a move that the government was willing to allow only X number of shops or grow houses or however it works in the area And there was even a mini-series on, I want to say MSN, chronicling a number of these groups that are literally fighting tooth and nail to get their hands on either shops or grow houses or land or whatever. Following the news and seeing things on television out here and following the story, I'm absolutely right on board with this Avery Markham storyline because it's exactly how it actually went down. I don't know if it was so much in the style of the OK Corral like it seems to be on the show, but the idea that somebody that has the wherewithal to go up and buy up land to prepare for an inevitable, it seems the way they're playing it up, sort of move, makes perfect sense. And it just speaks to the character of Avery Markham, the type of criminal he is, and it just further echoes the sentiment that while he smiles at you in the face, you should be shaking in your boots because that dude is a whole different level. And the storyline is great. It's topical and it fits, and they are doing it, no pun intended, justice, for the way the storyline's playing out. I'm very impressed with this as it's sort of opening up now.
Good point, and I want to get into one more thing that I know you've seen from the circumstances of living in Colorado as well, and I mention this in the same vein that you are in terms of giving credit to Graham Yost and company for getting the research right on all of the particulars. So, and not to go Cindy Civic's lesson on anybody, but with this pastiche of laws in this country under the banner of federalism, of course, as we know, federal law has not changed in this matter. So, and federal law, of course, governs banking in this country. So there has been the quandary of a lot of these pot guys out in California. What do we do with our money? What are we going to store it? What are we going to do this, that, whatever? That's one of the reasons on the show that Avery Markham has this in the pizza bank vault down there in Harlan, Kentucky, because he's got it sitting there waiting to do something else with it. Cannot have it in a bank because they're going to want to know where it came from. So they're doing an excellent job in terms of tying the laws into it and about how state and federal laws come into conflict.
Absolutely, and you got to commend them for that, even though you would probably expect that that's what the protocol would be, being that this is a law enforcement show. But no, you're absolutely right. They're on their P's and Q's with that. That's absolutely no secret. I mean, I know it's in the headlines, and just the statement of banks are not to do business with any sort of entrepreneurship that deals with the recreational marijuana use, but it's very real. I mean, you're seeing out here, at least we're seeing, interviews with people or guys that are big real estate moguls or whatever that are dipping into this, and their real estate ventures are also getting the boot. I saw one guy said that he's got some like 7 or 8 different accounts, different businesses, and all of them got frozen and locked out just because he happens to associate on the other end. So it's absolutely legit, and they're doing a great job with their due diligence to make sure that there's an authenticity there that we're accustomed to.
There really is, and it's kind of a fascinating kind of note to me. We talked a little bit tonight about the role of fan service in the show, and again, it's great when it can be done in a way where it augments the enjoyment of the show, and it's not being done merely for the sake of it. And those moments there, like where we referenced where Avery might have been a stand-in for the viewers as far as referencing history and talking about moments that you and I and other fans of the show would treasure. I almost kind of wonder here, because I'm a guy that, as a critic, same way that I am with my wrestling or anything else, I tend to be a smart mark. I almost wonder if Art, earlier in the show tonight, was a stand-in for the smart marks. He's warning Raylan about focus. And about, it's this Avery Markham, he looks like a juicy target, but supposedly you're just here still to take down Boyd and then go enjoy Florida with your family. So you and I had made that very point last week on the show that it's high risk, high reward to bring in an Avery Markham in this final season. it could help take this thing to a level of the all-time pantheon of TV, or it could be something that kind of muddies the waters a little bit and denies us that clean Raylan v. Boyd showdown we're looking for at the end. I had to chuckle when Art said that tonight. I don't know if Graham Yost was cynical enough to work on that kind of a level, but for any of us that are saying this is going to really augment the show if it goes like it should, and it could detract from the final season if it doesn't, I almost got a little bit of that meta sense when I heard Art giving the advice to Raylan tonight.
You know, I think sometimes we're in a mental place where we tend to want to give people too much credit. This may not be that time, though. Because if you think about it, they write the script, they get everything together, they do rehearsals, and then they shoot. Maybe even before they shoot, maybe Graham Yost looked at it and said, you know what? There's a lot of people out there that pay close enough attention that maybe Art's thing would be a good idea, or let's give Avery the ability to drop a little nod to the long-term fans, as you're referencing as audience on set. I would not put it past Graham Yost in the least to see 90% of an episode ready to go, and then say, you know what? Let's see if Art can reel Raylan in, or at least drop a hint here that he can't take on everybody as sort of a homage or whatever. I wouldn't put that past him at all. Not at all.
That's kind of funny because I've seen speculation about this with other top shows out there in terms of David Chase. Sometimes when he would have Tony Soprano grouse about the pressures of being the man in the top position, in a way that was David Chase sort of giving voice to the frustrations of being a showrunner on one of these top shows, or Matthew Weiner doing the same thing with Don Draper. And I think Matthew Weiner has even alluded to this too. That some of the stuff he's done with Don Draper has been almost kind of a way of taking some real life pressures and sort of adding it to the show there, and sort of making Don Draper a stand-in for him in his own life, being the guy who's in charge of Mad Men, which it's a weird meta loop on several levels when you think about shows doing that. But if they were, in fact, deploying Art in that manner, I mean, that's something where if you and I picked up on something they were doing, I think we've really got to take our hats off to them, because it's very clever if you can use a character to address a larger topic about the writing of the show in a way that doesn't seem like it's forced.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. That's the nuance there, is that these guys have been doing this for long enough that you'd really like to think that it's just that simple, that they're watching it unfold as they're creating it, and that it just might dawn on them that, hey, let's insert this just because we can, and hope it's as well received as we think it is right now. I have no problem tipping my hat to the idea that this is one of those shows that we'll look back on and say the brilliance was far exceeding what people gave them credit for up front.
Absolutely, and I think part of the brilliance of the final season has been, we talk about the characters of Tim and Rachel and about how they've been criminally underutilized through the years. Haven't seen that addressed in the case of Rachel, but in terms of having Tim out there more so with Raylan this year, I understand that Rachel was out there with him in one of the previous episodes in terms of accompanying him on the job, but more so it's been Raylan and Tim. It was Tim who was doing surveillance in this season's initial episode. We got to see them tonight. We got to see them rather quickly, I think, cracking the case of the carbon monoxide poisoning of Raylan's old high school teacher. That was the couple that we saw in the season premiere episode. The woman that I thought at the time was almost like a little bit of a Bizarro World Mags Bennett. It kind of looked like her a little bit, whatever, and seemed a little more pleasant and a tad more refined than Mags Bennett. But we found out, of course, they met a sad ending. Those guys cracked it pretty quickly, and they are very much on to what is going on, what the big picture is with Avery Markham. All the answers seem to be put out there tonight as far as what the game plan is, how Tiger Hawk security and how Ty are being deployed to help make this happen. And essentially now the battle has been joined. Last week the battle was joined between Boyd and Avery, but now we got us, as they say in the wrestling business, a three-way dance, because now Raylan is firmly established as an adversary for Avery as well.
To be honest with you, as much as I would love to say that I've got a beat on the angle here, I really don't. And that might just be part of my process, but we're seeing different elements sort of converge today that wasn't there last week. But right now, it's almost like I'm just sitting back and trying to enjoy the journey, because I have really no idea where all of these angles, looking as if they're going to intersect, I just can't imagine that they would. And again, we got to come back to this idea that at some point, there has to be at some point a Raylan v. Boyd situation. And right now, that does not seem like a logical possibility. But as they say in sports, that's why they play the games.
What I almost kind of thought tonight, I had a little bit of a sporting analogy in mind. And I almost thought, and it applies to a couple of the different, if there was an A, B, and a C story tonight, which there generally are, and, let's say that I'm not sure which was A, B, and C in the TV parlance, but the one with Raylan and Tim, we've addressed a decent amount. I think I'd definitely like to circle back around, because that final confrontation with Avery was definitely consequential. But let's address the other two-thirds of the tripod, because the sporting analogy that I want to make is fencing. I don't necessarily know all the terms, but I felt like there was a lot of feinting, thrusting, parrying, like you have in there, certainly between Ava and Catherine. We saw that. We'll get to that in a second here. But the storyline with, let's just call him Safecracker Jake Busey, I didn't even know who the actor was until you had texted me about that. And, of course, on the rewatch here, which is playing now, I did see that he was on the opening credits for it. And a spectacular exit for him, within about 15 or 20 minutes of coming on scene for the first time, and we can discuss that. But I almost felt like there was a little bit of, fencing going on here in terms of the preparation. Where that guy ultimately got blown to bits was during a trial run. They found a type of heavy vault that was just about the same as what they were going to be going after. So it was a dry run, essentially, for what they were going to face there. And something went awry. I couldn't quite tell if it was intentionally or otherwise. I guess it was just in the form of an accident, because he had just been chastising those guys for having their cell phones, and that blew him up. But that whole thing really essentially was just a trial run, and that seemed to me to be one of the themes tonight of getting ready for what's coming.
Yeah, I really did enjoy that. First off, this was something I texted you earlier. Wayne Duffy needs to stop getting exploded on. But,
Yeah, good point.
If he's going to be in the mix, it's probably going to happen again. But no, the beauty of that, and Jake Busey is not somebody that most people would recognize. I don't think he's ever been the star of anything. Just to give you an idea, I remember him most from Starship Troopers, which is horrible, and Tomcats, a very silly romantic comedy movie where he's like fifth in the billing, and it wasn't even a big budget deal. Anyway, so he's not a heavy hitter. But what's nice is, and we saw that today, is how he's able to play these characters. I'm sure it was not difficult for him to be the character we saw today. And the other thing is, I was almost wondering if the cell phone thing was an indicator from the safe that said, hey, you effed up, and now you're about to die. Because the look on his face, that's exactly how I read it when they realized that the phones didn't belong to either Wynn or Boyd. All that's not important, but his short-lived Justified experience will probably reign high up there as far as the unimportant guys are concerned, because that was that was a fun couple of minutes with that guy.
It was. And from everything you've told me about him on air and off air, everything that we say about how this show, how a lot of times with the guest casting, how they end up having guys stretch themselves, sounds like in this instance they just decided to throw one right down Broadway, right into his wheelhouse, because it sounds like a role that seems pretty simpatico with what they know that he does well and what he did in those other roles. That seems like what you're describing to us, Jason.
Absolutely. The second I saw him, I thought, okay, I knew he wasn't going to be around for long. I thought he would last longer than one episode, but and I just knew that just by seeing him on screen that he was going to be almost a comic relief kind of a character that served a purpose. What that purpose is yet to be seen at that point, but it actually fit right in line with guys like Patton Oswalt and Stephen Root being some of these guest appearance guys that really do fit in wonderfully.
Absolutely, and that was a casting role that was very well done. I mean, they always get the casting right on this show, regardless of how they're using people. But again, playing to his demonstrative strengths in terms of how he does characters, certainly the right way to go with this. It's funny that I had wanted to get to also, as I said, the third part of the tripod here I thought was Ava and Catherine, and right now on the replay, which is playing on FX as we're talking, I'm seeing this. I'm having one of my questions answered here, and I actually feel kind of badly for Ava in having that question in my head answered, because it looks like Catherine did coerce her into doing the coke based on the way that Ava is conducting herself in this jewelry store. So things are going to get even worse for her if she's going to be going down the junkie path, which my guess is what looms next for her. With this here, but the whole subplot with them, and again, maybe Catherine did that as an instrument of control, but gets her to go in there. They run the jewelry store heist. A good part of it is, kind of girls' day out, and with Joelle Carter and with Mary Steenburgen, they're such great actresses. I flash back to what we said last year with, as we called him, FBI agent Eric Roberts, about how we could watch a spinoff of him and Raylan just doing stuff like a crazy cop story. I could watch these two doing like a Thelma and Louise routine. That would be a perfect spinoff to me. It's just watching these two crazy broads fleecing guys and running scams and stuff like that. It was fun to watch them doing that, but ultimately it was much more serious and much more menacing because Catherine basically was gaslighting Ava and kind of dropped the hammer on her at the end when she mentioned what she did about the prison guard. Essentially, I know that why you got out was not on the up and up, and I'm going to expose that. And that sent Ava into the paranoid fit that I think she knew it would.
I got to jump back real quick here. I agree with everything, especially in that it's bad news for Ava going forward. And I will, in a minute, explain how I was cheating by mentioning that. I go back to the Coke thing. And this has happened with you and me a couple times, where you'll see something, and I will see something that's the exact same thing, and the difference of people in different places will interpret it differently. And bear with me, because this may be completely way off base. But I think the Coke thing was a Training Day situation. And for anyone who hasn't seen Training Day, what I mean by that is I think that was Steamboat's character's way of, basically saying, you're going to play by my rules because I said so, and I'm not going to tell you why. So I don't know that necessarily the Coke thing is going to become a thing going forward. I think it was just an opportunity for her to pull the strings and be in charge of this woman that I assume she has some affection for, just as another woman of power is concerned. Now, I mentioned cheating, and that's because I imagine before I came on the air, you were not watching the coming up next week thing. And the hook there is that Ava may be lost in the wind. as we saw at the end of this episode, before Boyd came in talking about ice cream and sleeping in their own bed, she was ready to get the hell out of Dodge, out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like she may actually follow through on that and run temporarily. So I don't know how much the drug played in outside of just what this was for Steenburgen's character as a power play. But you're absolutely right. Her behavior in the jewelry store and her behavior in the car afterwards absolutely suggests that she was, to be blunt, high.
Yes, and that's very interesting because I saw the coming attractions in terms of getting ready here for the show, but more or less with the sound down at that point. I did notice Limehouse and Constable Bob coming back next week, so the fan service parade of justified favorites continues through this season. And again, when you're going to do that, you got to do it right. But the good thing is they have the established track record from tonight. Dickey and Loretta were certainly used in the right way. You got to have confidence that Limehouse and Constable Bob are going to be used exactly as perfectly as they were previously. So you've got that coming up to look forward to next week. But again, this indication tonight of, again, the battle being joined now all the way around. We have our triangle of doom, if you will. Raylan and Boyd coming into the season here. Raylan, again, in the earlier conversation tonight with Art, getting more and more intrigued with the notion of Avery Markham and potentially trying to do something about him. And ultimately, as him and Tim piece together through the course of the episode the enormity of what's going on with the land grab there, the fires that have been going on in town that in many instances they haven't proven are arsons, but again, seem very suspicious. And now with Loretta being leveraged by Avery Markham, that makes it personal because, again, for this whole thing again tonight of, you're not my daddy, really it's been sort of a surrogate, not exactly fatherhood, I don't know what you'd call it, surrogate unclehood, I guess, would be the next step down from there in terms of Raylan looking out for her over a period of time, and that has been somewhat running directly parallel to his conflicted nature about becoming a father, which presumably he is set to fully embrace at the end of the series, move to Florida, take that on. In the meantime, looking after Loretta is one of his final obligations in Kentucky, along with nailing Boyd Crowder, and now potentially nailing Avery Markham. So there's a lot of balls that are being juggled. We've talked about it with the writing staff, but not least of which with Raylan as well as he gets deeper into this season.
Yeah, this triangle, as you put it, is intriguing. Doesn't quite say it. And, just a quick side note, as somebody who's recently new to fatherhood, if you will. 3 years is not terribly fresh, but sure, make no mistake about it. In that situation, he's absolutely more so now than even in season 2, doing and saying what he is to and with Loretta, because it is a vicarious situation. He's absolutely saying all fathers want their children to be safe or whatever it was, because that's what's in his mind about his own daughter, who he's not even really seen for more than, a few days. So that's absolutely a true deal. But, yeah, getting back to this triangle of whatever, I have no idea what's happening, and that's the beauty of it. And then going back to Art's thing about, trying to focus and you can't wage war on everybody. I don't know where Raylan stops. I don't know. He's just not wired to say one thing, pursue it, get its closure, and then move on. I just don't see that happening. I don't know how he's not going to go after Boyd and Wynn Duffy and Avery Markham and Ty Warren all at the same time. I just can't wrap my head around how it could possibly be just Boyd or just Markham or whatever it is. I think somewhere down the line, something's going to happen where maybe Markham is dealt with in some way, leaving us with the only thing left to get closure on which would be Raylan and Boyd, because as you and I have talked many times before, this has to end with some finite closure on Raylan v. Boyd. No matter how good the Avery Markham thing is, and it's phenomenal, we can't end the series without closure on Raylan and Boyd.
Exactly, and you get the sense it's going to be cataclysmic for Boyd in that regard, but perhaps also equally, the further we go along, perhaps that may be cataclysmic for Raylan as well, because it would take something, well, like you said, what's going to make him let go of what's in Kentucky and to stop bluffing and to get down there once and for all. A tiny quibble, if I may be Nelson Nitpicker here, about the timeline of the show. Okay, you mentioned Season 2. And Season 2, at the very end of it, is when Winona first found out she was pregnant. Time moved very slowly on this show. She didn't give birth until the end of Season 4. Between Seasons 4 and 5, she gave birth. So the rudimentary grasp of math in my head tells me that amount of time was less than 9 months. So, and Season 5 came and went fairly quickly. Season 6 followed right thereafter. And you had everything tonight with Loretta. And this is the case sometimes in puberty. Actresses grow up, and Loretta tonight certainly looked more of the young woman even than she did previously times on the show here. And they're treating her like she's 18, like she's got her own place, whatever. She went from mid-teens, essentially, Season 2, to where they're at tonight. This is almost like the soap opera rapid aging thing, where a kid goes away, he's 12 years old, he goes away to boarding school, he comes back 6 months later, and he's 18. I'm joking. It's not as dramatic as that, but they did kind of play with the timeline with Loretta, given how slowly time moves on the show.
Yeah, and some of this is logistics, and you have to make it work however you have to make it work. And I'm almost inclined to think that maybe Loretta in Season 2 was the actress that played her was older than the character she was playing, so that as time evolved, they could play it up the way they are. But you're absolutely right. There's some serious time lapse inconsistencies, and I guess the only thing I can say to that is, in the grand scheme of things, how big of how egregious of a misstep is that? But you're absolutely right. There's a huge problem with Winona's pregnancy timeline, and it almost feels like, and I don't know how many people watched it. It's a phenomenal series, and I hope most people watched it. But it felt, as you're saying that, it feels a lot like the Newsroom on HBO, where you've got Season 1 kind of is in real time, and then Season 2 is like 13 episodes that all take place over the course of like 2 weeks. And then Season 3 is 6 episodes that take, a couple months. So there's all kinds of fast and slow, and I don't know where it adds up. But, there's definitely some inconsistencies there. But at the end of the day, everything else is so phenomenal that I'll give them a pass on that.
Exactly. I'm just indulging my inner comic book guy here, Worst time lapse ever, But it was, again, I thought another fine episode tonight. As you indicated, it seems like we're building towards something really big. Of course, the 5th episode last year was the undisputed high point of the season. You could ask every last person on earth, and they'll agree with that statement, that Shot All to Hell was definitely the climax of the season last year. A little problematic when that's your 5th episode, but I don't know if we're going to have anything quite like that again. I'm sure the 5th episode that we're going to see next week, I'm sure that's not going to be the high point of the season, but we're expecting a big build before the big build at the end. What are the chances you think we get it next week?
I don't think it's coming next week. I think next week is another one of these building block episodes, which is as entertaining as this one was for the diehard fan. That's what it was. It was another building block episode. I think it might have not done as much as last week's episode, but we'll see. But I think more importantly here is I hope that it's by design, but it feels like they've been meticulous in that this series, this season, being the last, will build almost in a linear fashion to a very nice crescendo at the very end. I don't know that we're going to see a whole lot of peaks and valleys I think it's going to be one of those cases where each episode is better than the one before. And before we run short on time, I just want to mention that second only to Jake Busey exploding, I wanted to make mention of Gutterson's comment about wanting to go out, being choked out by Sigourney Weaver's thighs, had me literally laughing out loud at the television. Another case where they are giving Gutterson a little bit more love.
Yeah, that was a great moment there. We've talked about that through the course of the show. The closest that you and I have, I'd say, to a criticism of any kind is if only there could have been more Tim Gutterson through the course of the show. It's a phenomenal character. Jacob Pitts is an amazing actor. We know he's going to go on to do some great things after this show. I can certainly think of one project off the top of my head that I'd like to see him in. But, I definitely... Yes, exactly. But this is it's been a great ride through the course of this season. 4 episodes down out of 13. We pick up again next week with episode 5. Before you know it, we're going to be at the halfway point of the final season. It's been exactly as good as I've been expecting and hoping for so far. I know that's been the case with you also, and I look forward to discussing it with you next week again, Jason, and as we get a little bit closer to the finish line here, seeing just what they got for us in 6.5.
Yeah, halfway is a depressing thought, but one we'll enjoy.
Well, as Chris Hardwick likes to say on Talking Dead, we'll get through it together. This is something we will collectively get through it together. We will provide therapy for everyone out there. Thank you again, Jason, tonight, and thank you all for joining us, everybody, for mini episode 520 of the FDH Lounge.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the periodic table of elements.